Welcome back to the Death Lineup. There's been a lack of stuff going on in Warriors land, which is why we were able to take another few days off than we normally would. But what is there to talk about? Like everything, I'm trying to look up some stuff. Like, there is some news actually today, which we'll get to. We'll open with the news, but it's
I was gonna say that's the emergency pod. Are we gonna sign Bazemore or JTA?
Harry Giles.
That too.
They should. You know what they should do?
They should just sign Bazemore and get it over with.
No, they should sign Harry Giles and do some sort of marketing around Harry Styles and Harry Giles, and try to get some young fans in. Maybe Harry Styles can come sing the national anthem or something. He's hot, man. I don't listen to his music, but
do you think it'll be Warriors versus SAC opening night, or do you think it'll be Warriors Lakers?
I think it'll be Warriors Lakers, but it should be Warriors SAC.
It should be Warriors SAC. So if you get Harry Giles, then you promote his coming home.
Yeah,
playing his former team.
Harry Giles. You know, I remember Harry Giles because he was like the number one prospect coming out of college high school that year. And then he just kept hurting his knee, I think.
This is Marshall's favorite player of all time.
Really?
Really?
Why?
I don't know. Probably because of that high school stuff.
Harry Giles. But there was Klay Thompson on Podcast P. We'll talk about that. Nothing really newsworthy that came out of that, but it was just fun because Klay's fun. And Podcast P is pretty good at that stuff.
No, they're like, I think they're like Leaps and Bounds, the best player podcast.
I was going to ask you about that. And maybe when we talk about that, we'll talk about that a little bit because, you know, we listen to Andre. I don't listen as much as I was.
They're done anyway. Season 2's over. I didn't realize it, but yeah, they're not doing it right now.
Obviously Draymond, but he's a single person podcast, which is really hard. And also, I'm still upset because he didn't stand on it. It's supposed to be new media, and he's still not standing on it. We haven't heard why he punched Jordan Poole in the face. Yeah, who else does player pods that's out there?
Austin Rivers.
Okay, yeah, we got to talk about our Ringer Connect, Austin Rivers. We're always going to give love to Austin Rivers and his podcast. Ben Cruz, shout out to Ben Cruz. But yeah, like I think Podcast P might be the best one.
Yeah, it's not really, now that I think about it, there's not really that many. The JJ Redick one, but he's former player.
And you know, another former player is Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. I always subscribe to them because I'll hear something and then I just never listen and I unsubscribe. But JJ Redick's a good one because I think JJ Redick's podcast probably helped him really get connected with ESPN.
Yeah.
And you know, he's talented, but you show that you can reach younger listeners. And that probably helps him with ESPN.
There's something about Podcast P's though, where it's like, I really like the hosts. I think they're all funny.
Who are those guys?
I think so. I guess one of them, what we learned from the podcast is one of them played AAU with Klay and PG. That's where he kind of, that's where he comes from. And the other one, Jackie, I guess he's an actor or a former. Like I looked up they were talking about the movie ATL or something. I never heard of it, and I looked it up, and yeah, Jackie, he's one of the cast members. Big Boy, T.I.
Jackie Long and Dallas Rutherford. Interesting.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out who Jackie Long was because he has he's like an old school voice, but when you look at him, he's not that old. Like he's younger than me, I think.
Yeah.
But and then the other guy, I guess he was the coach's son who got the point guard on AAU.
I thought he was funny because he just kept like, it's like the coolest thing that's ever happened to him is that he could claim that he played AAU ball with Klay and PG, and I would have been the same way. But there was a point where they were asking Klay like, "Hey, what's your like sneaky tip for shooters?" Like Steph told us that the elbows are important. Yeah, and Klay's like, "Oh, for me, it's the shoulders." And they started like pretend shooting to show. Oh no! It was when Klay said that he catches the ball and immediately goes up. He doesn't do the dip. And so they were all practicing it. And then I don't know, I couldn't see, it was an audio podcast, so I couldn't see if they're actually passing a little ball to each other to practice shooting, or if it was just a fake ball.
The video's up on YouTube, but you were listening on
audio. But I was listening to it on my way home. But the Dallas guy, he's like passing it to Klay, and I don't know if it's a pretend pass or just a real basketball. He's like, He's like, just like the old days. I would have totally said something like that.
Question for you. You know, in 15 years, you'll still be a pretty young person. If we have, you know, non-human driving cars, and you're in the passenger seat in your own car coming home from work, you're gonna have an iPad in your thing. You're not gonna have a phone. So maybe that's when the YouTube and the video podcasts will really be the thing. And rather,
They're just relying on self-driving cars to evolve, and so we'll just be able to, like, instead of the car where the Tesla has the screen or those cars have the screen, it's just iPad.
yeah, that's what it
the
is.
screen.
So was there anything in that podcast that you thought was newsworthy? I know they talked about JP. Klay loves that guy. I guess they practiced recently. I saw some photos of them all shooting.
That was cool. Yeah.
Seth and Steph and JP and Klay.
And Scoot Henderson.
Oh, Scoot was with them. That's when I saw, because Steph was doing stuff with Scoot.
Yeah. I thought the only other noteworthy thing is that they are in the group chat with CP now. Steph, Dre, Andrew, Klay, CP. I'm assuming Looney's in that. I'd assume the whole team.
What if they left Looney out? That would be mean.
Messed up, man. Loon can't get left out of this stuff, man. But they're in a group chat and they're gonna do some private workouts or like some type of like boot camp stuff before the season, which I thought that's newsworthy. It seems like they all have spoken, which you'd hope. And it feels like there is this weird, like, I don't know, you expect like your favorite team, you expect them all to be best friends off the court. And like, that's really not how it is anymore with our team specifically. And
what about when Klay said that he and Steph didn't even talk for the first 2 years they played together?
Yeah, see, I would have never guessed that at all. But no, I kind of get sad when, you know, you hear about Draymond and JK's relationship. Obviously, Draymond killed the JP relationship. It's like, you know, I get it.
Stand on it, Draymond. You got to become a mentor. You can't just be beating these kids up, man.
I actually think PG and Dre were talking about it in their pod, where it's like, you know, there's just guys always filtering in and out. They, you know, you take it as a personal shot when one of your vets doesn't want to come and re-sign with your team.
Yeah.
When really it's just they're chasing their best venture for their own selves when it makes sense. But yeah, like I look at the Pistons team that I like and follow, like they're all like best buds. Like,
well, they're all the same age.
They're all like the same age too, and they all just like hang out with each other off the court. Like I wish
you know when they're not going to be best buds
is when they have to make some decisions on who's going to be
when
the
they
guy
all come up
forward
for contracts at the same time. That's when they're not going to be best buds.
Yeah.
I think that my favorite thing about Klay, because I've listened to him on a few of these podcasts now.
Is he the same on all of them, or was this one he felt particularly like?
I think it's because he knew Paul from when they were younger, so there was a little bit more of a connection. And that's what I was also going to say about Paul, is what's good about him is he's connected through AAU, and he's at that age where the NBA superstardom of players has never been bigger. Like his era, because he comes into the league, what did they say? 08? Did they say they were 08?
Klay was 11, right? He was
2011. Okay. I'm thinking high school. I'm thinking their high school, end of their high school year. So from that point in the early 2010s, Twitter is on a roll, social media, YouTube, distribution of stuff. If you wanted to have your little product, it's much easier. So I think that makes it a really good time for someone like him, because if he's in that, he doesn't seem like he's too cool for school. Like Steph Curry's too cool for school. He's not gonna like do a podcast and invite all these people who he played against on. That's just not going to be his style. But Paul's doing it, and he's doing it in such a welcoming and a conversational way. I'm sure he's got beef with guys. Like, he's not going to invite everybody. Right. So, but yeah, there's just something so inviting and so welcoming about his show that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And I think Klay fit the bill in every perspective. It feels like Klay, I don't know, I feel like he's like wiser. And you go through 2 injuries where you don't really get to do the thing you love, and you have to kind of be a regular person for 2 straight years. You probably learn a thing or two. And I felt like he was wise in the sense that, like, I don't know, he was able to say, like, yeah, I messed up there and I was wrong in that moment. And usually that takes someone like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years to do that publicly. Like that Devin Booker thing was just last year. It was just last season. And he was already like, yeah, I got in my feelings. Like he was cooking me. And and I got my feelings, so that's why I did that. And I totally like respected that. I feel like Draymond. It's so ironic about Draymond is Mr. Stand on your opinion, and I feel like he wouldn't apologize for any of that
Yeah,
stuff.
because it shows a little bit of weakness.
And but that's the
in
fake
quote,
weakness.
yeah,
It's fake weakness.
right? It's ego.
Yeah.
It's ego exposed in a sense. But if you are Draymond and you have to believe that whatever it is that makes you is kind of your fuel and your superpower. You try and stay that, because if you change it up in any way and maybe you lose a step, then he probably feels like, oh, I gave in, I can't give in. But I think you're right about Klay. And what's funny is I think when he did that, Marcus Thompson was like, Klay was just in his feelings. Like, because he's so close to that scene. And that's why it's good to have such great reporters and journalists close to the team. Because I feel like things will come out with stories. And we kind of had an inkling because we listened to Anthony Slater and we listened to Tim and we listened to Marcus Thompson. By the way, my goal, I interviewed Larry Krueger a couple weeks ago. I want to do the KMBR thing. I'm going to reach out to Chris Townsend because I also worked with him at KMBR. I'm going to shoot my shot, man. I'm going to try to get Kawakami. If I can get Kawakami to come on, and even if it's for 20 minutes, and I think I have an in, because I don't know if you heard the podcast with Kawakami and Dunleavy, and we'll get to that at the end.
Oh, I haven't. I need to listen to that.
It's not. I mean, Dunleavy is Dunleavy. He's not super.
I don't know him enough.
He's very professional, okay. But Kawakami mentioned, what's your favorite show, and so of course Dunleavy was talking about the Steph documentary and
such a business
the full the tennis show on Netflix, which is really good, but I got disinterested because I'm just not following the tennis game as closely right now. But Kawakami said the Oscar De La Hoya documentary. And the reason why that's my in with him is because not a lot of people know that Tim followed boxing really closely. He wrote the very first biography on De La Hoya from as far as I can remember. So that might be my in, because I can use the boxing angle, because I know he's still interested, even though he's not reporting on it anymore. And he's close to Oscar. He had Oscar on his show like last year or the year before.
What the heck?
So that's going to be my angle. If I can get Tim, then hey, man, I might be on top of the world. Then I'm gonna reach out to Marcus. I'm gonna reach out to Ethan.
I bet you probably have a better chance with Ethan.
No, I think I would. I think I would. Ethan, I just tell him I'm subscribing to his thing, and he'll probably be pretty cool with that.
Yeah, he probably would.
So we'll talk about the Kawakami thing in a bit. But just back to Klay. The thing about it, and the reason why we root for him so hard, is because he is honest about his feelings, and he is kind of talking through his thoughts in some cases. So you feel connected to him. He's got to play though, because that's what's going to break the hearts of the fans, is if he's not playing at the level that they want him to, or that we think he should play. And so that is my hope, is that Klay can bounce back a little bit from that poor playoffs, because he didn't have a terrible season. He had maybe an inefficient season, but it was the playoffs that everyone remembers.
I mean, the tough thing is, though, is like you look at like young players who maybe aren't good in the playoffs, and you're like, okay, well, they're young, they might add a couple things to their bag. And I think where I'm going here is that, like, what could Klay have done differently in the playoffs? It just had to make the shot, like all the moves he did it's classic Klay, wide open shots. He just had to make it. So I'm just wondering, is that like a mental thing for him that he needs to change to perform at that level in the playoffs? Because he's I think either one of the Athletic guys or he himself even said, like, yeah, last season in the off season, I couldn't mentally get myself to play pickup fives because of the injuries. And so I'm wondering, this summer, has that mentality changed? Has he, done the full pickup to incorporate into his training routine that makes it, a full training? Because I think even going into last year, he said he was out of shape too. So, how
celebrating, man?
This summer?
It's the old Pat Riley thing, the disease of more. We win that title, man. There's a lot of celebrating going on. And by the way, You didn't watch Winning Time season 1, right?
I didn't. I am going to though.
The season 2 starts off with that whole idea that the Lakers win the championship, and now everyone's going to try and
It's
catch
the
up
top.
to them.
It's the pinnacle. Like, what is there
season 2
more
is about,
to
or at least
prove?
episode 1 of season 2 started out that way. I'm only like 10 minutes in, but all right, let's talk about this Steph documentary. No, actually, we didn't even talk about the news. Let's talk about that news first. Okay, from Shams, the Warriors are holding free agent workouts with veterans Dion Waiters,
Gross.
Tony Snell,
Kind of gross.
Kent Bazemore,
Kind of like.
JTA,
I like.
Harry Giles,
I don't even remember.
and Trey Burke. Trey Burke is interesting. You know why Trey Burke is interesting?
Why?
I think he predated Jordan Poole at Michigan. I think, right? Am I thinking of the same guy?
Trey Burke.
Was he the guy?
He was a bucket in college. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit older. Yeah, actually, he's a lot older. He's much older than I realized. He was probably 2 classes before Draymond. I mean, not Draymond, but before JP. Let's see. Am I remembering him? Yeah, he was at Michigan. He was
in Michigan in 2000. He left in 2013. Poole
Yeah.
probably got there at like 2017.
Yeah,
or 18.
Yeah. But he remember how, because Trey Burke was the guard when Michigan went to the title game prior, and then Jordan Poole got them back to the title game, right? Before Jordan Poole left, didn't Michigan go to the championship?
I think they did, and I think he sucked, is what I heard. Against Villanova, was it? Isn't that what Uncle was saying at the barbecue? I forget. That weirdly got brought up.
Was it the DiVincenzo?
It was the DiVincenzo team. I think.
Oh man. So yeah, I didn't realize that Trey Burke was that old. But out of those guys, who do you see as a possibility? It sounds like Bazemore and JTA, just because they have the alumni status with the Warriors.
Look, at this point, like those names you just read, there's no player that you're gonna like get and like I can guarantee you're gonna give me playoff rotation minutes, or I can guarantee that you're a little diamond in the rough and you're gonna turn into this 25 point per game scorer got like no one realized and should have picked up sooner. Like this is Dion Waiters, shot chucker, who will give you 15 one night and 2 the next night. Like this is Trey Burke, also a shot creator. Tony Snell, he's literally famous for putting up 0 stats. So I think going in the direction of guys can play in your system, I think it should just dwindle it down to Kent and JTA. I'm a little interested in Harry Giles just because of the size and he's working his way back. Sometimes you got that hunger in you to get your way back in the league. Maybe you want that little fight.
What did Harry Giles even do last year?
He's probably overseas.
So he last played in the NBA in
like 2019, probably
the 2021 season.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he barely played 9 minutes a game.
Last time Kent played for us, he was kind of good, for what we needed. Like, wasn't he like if you look at like Basketball Reference for that Steph season where he had the scoring title and we lost to the Grizzlies in the play-in? Like, I would wonder if you filtered by minutes, is Baze top 7? Probably, right? I'm assuming Baze would be top 7 on our team in minutes.
That season, he played 20 minutes a game.
What was he? So, dude, that's probably more than he's probably the 6th or 5th, right?
He also shot 41% from 3, but he did not take very many of them.
Yeah. I guess my point is that he got a lot of run on that squad, and with a lot of run, he actually played fine. Like he probably played above whatever he was getting paid, So, and what did he do after that? Did he go back to Atlanta or did he go to LA? Like, he went to LA.
He went to the Lakers
and didn't play.
He played 14 minutes a game, but he did not shoot well at all.
But you'd say 14 minutes a game, but how many games?
I think 14. No, 39. He only played 39 games.
Okay, 39 out of the 82. I remember them giving up on him or something like that. But, I think there's a lot of these Warriors guys who are only good on the Warriors and they would be bad on every other team. We could literally look down and probably grab about 7 guys per championship team that were like that. Like Patrick McCaw has not been in the league since he left the Warriors, went to the Toronto team for 1 year, and now he's been in the G League the entire time. Like what happened to Alfonso McKinney?
Too.
He does. But there are just those guys who just play better on the Warriors and can't really perform that well on other teams. And Baze isn't one of them. Baze had a pretty solid career after Golden State, but JTA is one of them. Didn't play well in the Lakers. Didn't play well in Utah. So, yeah, I think it should dwindle down to those.
You
two
know,
guys.
JTA's problem is if JTA could stick the three, I think he's a little bit more serviceable. But he just
that's why I'd probably prefer Bays because we have enough non-shooters on this squad as it is with Draymond, Looney, Trace Jackson Davis. We'll see with Kuminga, and Saric kind of low volume, but
well, they got okay. Let's read it off right here. CP, Steph, Klay, Wiggs, Dre, Loon, GP2, Kuminga, Moody, Pods, TJD, Saric, and Corey Joseph. That is your 13 right there. And so they will be adding this player, whoever they add as the 14th. And you know, the one that we keep bringing up because of our connection to the Ringer and to Ben Cruz and to Austin Rivers is Austin Rivers. I would love to see Austin Rivers on this team.
Yeah, but all the guys you just named off, like how many are above 6'5"? Steph,
Corey Joseph, short.
Joseph, Chris Paul.
Pods is short. GP2 short. And
that's my
CP
point.
And Steph.
I think it's a wing. I think we need some. I think it's Kent. If they're going to choose from that amount of players, it's the Steph appeaser too. Like that needs to be mentioned. Kent Bazemore is at the Steph Curry camp with Steph because he's connected to Steph, connected to Under Armour.
Right? It's the role that you were talking about earlier. Kent knows what the role would be, which is.
Do you remember that story in that season that Kent came back? They were in Toronto, I want to say, and most of the guys didn't play that Toronto game. I forgot why, but they all go into the locker room. I think. Oh man, if I can remember this correctly,
is that the one they got blown out by like 50 points?
I think so, but it was before. It was the Wiseman's year. And I think it was then. I think Steph and Draymond are in the locker room telling this Warriors team like that's embarrassing. Like that's not how the Warriors should play. Like that's what we've done for this team. Like you guys didn't represent it. Like they were kind of going in on him, is what I heard. I think it was a Slater story. Another person who was in that because Klay wasn't playing that year. It was Steph yelling at them, Draymond yelling at them, or maybe Steph and Draymond leading that discussion, and Kent Bazemore. Like this is how the Warriors are supposed to be, and you guys aren't representing what we built. Like, okay, Kent.
Bays.
Well, yeah, I think he could be a good little addition for the bench.
It is also just the fact that, I mean, maybe I'm sure everyone wants to play, but what was the problem in the playoffs last year that was pretty loud problem, which is guys were chirping at not getting in the game, and you need somebody on the bench as a vet to get the bench fired up. You know, Bays was a fantastic bench guy as far as getting, off the bench and waving the towel and getting his team up, like all that stuff. Which I think I said last year. I was like, who cares about that stuff? But I mean, it was proven that they did miss that this year.
If we were to rank like Warriors bench vibe guys, like it's probably like 1A, 1B, Nate Robinson, Kent Bazemore. Like they were so cool. Nate Robinson was awesome on the bench for the Warriors. Him and Steph shooting back and forth.
Played a lot though that season.
Yeah. But no, I can't even remember some other guys who were good bench guys. But I think Bays is the choice here. I feel like he kind of, if they're gonna do it, like I mean, I'm not closing my options off if there's someone not on that list that they're still talking to. I'm just purely talking about this specific list. If they're going to pull someone from this list, I think it should be Kent.
And it's possible that they hold, at the end of this tweet, Sham said Golden State has multiple round of workouts to identify signing. So this is just the beginning of that. So
JTA is lined up for whatever Molly's job is, the NBC guy or whatever.
I would love JTA just because I have my JTA shirt.
Yeah, I would. Oh man, that one jersey he wore to the dunk contest with like, I think, was he 00 or just 0? Or was he? I forgot what number he was, but it was like, it was like the Mexico flag as the number. Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it was cool. All right, let's talk about this Steph documentary. Now, you have grown up with Steph Curry being in your life as a basketball fan for the majority of it. I think, it's like LeBron, Carmelo, and then Steph is probably who you remember as like the players who were, who you were rooting for growing up. Was there anything in the documentary that you learned that you did not know about Steph? Because they did have a lot of Davidson stuff in there.
Shout out Marcus Thompson. because I don't think there was anything new I learned that I hadn't already learned from his book.
From Golden.
Like, I actually, that's a good question because I didn't really think of that. Did I learn? He seemed like a fun guy in college.
Like kind of like a goofy,
like a
nerdy
goofball.
guy.
I can't imagine. Like Steph is still kind of like goofy.
Well, he was just singing with
Paramore.
Paramore. I forget the lead singer's name. Haley. What's her name? She's really good. I really like her voice. But yeah, he was out there in his glasses, just singing his brains out.
But yeah, like this Steph, like you get him in an interview and he'll give you like absolutely nothing. He's such a politician in how he speaks in interviews, and like he's just not going to give you anything. But yeah, college Steph seems like he would have just told you all of his life story and back.
I ruined the whole documentary for Crystal.
Why?
So
you told her what happens to Davidson?
Yeah, I was like, I forgot how I said it, but I said something like, like I was trying to remember when they actually lost in this tournament, and she's like, oh, they lost? I was like, yeah, they lost. They're not going to win the NCAA championship, Davidson. She's like, oh,
that was
thanks.
Like the whole movie.
I was like, oh, I forgot. I just forgot. That would have been so high on his list of, things that you know about Steph that I just figured she knew, but nope, she didn't know. So I spoiled the whole thing.
I didn't really do any homework for the documentary in terms of, like, I don't think I watched the trailer. I don't think I watched anything. So when I went into it, I was like, oh yeah, we're going to get to see some like Monte behind the scenes.
Yeah,
we're going to get to see like all those first couple years with the AC Law and the championships. It's like, oh no,
Keith
it's
Smart
literally
benching Steph.
It's literally just Davidson and the 2022 ring, which is kind of nice. Is because like the 2022 ring, like even though I watched all 82 for that year. Like I really did. I maybe watched 81 because the one game I missed is when we went to Santa Cruz and watched Kuminga and Moody.
Yeah.
Like I was locked in for that year. And I think it was nice because they were talking about some random Utah Jazz game where Steph was coming off of just hitting the record and he's on this cold stretch.
Missing all these shots.
And I was like, watching that, I was like, no, I watched that game. They won that game because they were making it look like they were going to lose it because Steph couldn't hit a shot. And then after, like, oh yeah, they won that game. Like a random Utah Jazz game on like a Friday. I was able to remember. But yeah, no, I totally thought we were getting it all. I thought that was going to be like the all-in-one Steph documentary. So I actually was a little disappointed, but it's my fault,
I'll use a word that Steph overuses in his vocabulary: the narrative. The narrative of the documentary was that Steph was overlooked and underrated coming out of high school, going into college, coming out of college and into the NBA draft. And the last championship, the Warriors were overlooked and underrated. And so they connected those two moments or those two seasons and into one documentary. So the thing that I wish they would have had more stuff in there. Did you listen to Steph on Real Ones?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Steph was actually telling Don Nelson stories because did Raja have any crossover with the? I don't remember if Raja play for the Warriors for like a small amount of time.
I don't remember.
There might have been some crossover there. Anyways, so he was talking about Don Nelson and he was like giving Don Nelson stories. I was like, oh wow, I've never heard Steph really talk too much about Nelly. And so I was kind of hoping we get a little bit more of that in the documentary. Obviously not, but I would say the only thing that I was disappointed in, and it's because in the very beginning of the documentary, there's a KD sighting.
That was so cool.
KD comes in the club to help them celebrate whatever they were. Was it the championship? Were they celebrating?
No, it was his record.
Oh yeah, the 3-point record. So KD's there, and he just comes through, and and Steph's like, that's the most misunderstood person in the NBA or whatever the quote was. And so I was like, oh, that's a little bit of a tease. So we'll see a little bit of the KD Steph stuff. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you can't tell that story of being underrated when you are the most
dominant team
of all time, and everyone expects you to win. So there was very little of KD in that, because that is the story. Now, if you want to tell a story about the Warriors, and this is for, I'm sure
it's going to be done at some point,
documentarian chomping at the bit. But I bet you it's the guys. It's going to be Steph and Dre and Klay, and they'll have their own production stuff. They're going to be the ones behind the story because they're going to want to tell it in a specific way. But the second the Warriors lose to the Cavs in 2016, then you go right to Draymond talking about how soon after he called KD about coming to play for the Warriors. And then you have that whole thing. And the end of that is KD tearing the Achilles, Klay tearing up his knee, them losing that thing, then the pandemic, and you kind of, all the bad stuff. And then you talk about where they are in their careers. With the Warriors, they're winning championships. So that's kind of a nice end to there. And hopefully for KD, you have some good stuff too, because
hey, that documentary could be extended if we get a little Western Conference Finals action.
That'd be great. That would be fantastic. And you can do that. But that's going to be the one in 5 years or whatever it is that you can tell. So, but I would say the Steph documentary is very well done. It's very well shot.
Coogler.
Is that who was?
Yeah, the Black Panther director, Ryan Coogler, I think was
was he
co-directing or directing Steph's.
There's a lot of footage from Davidson time. So whoever took, some of it was game footage, so I'm sure they just had it, but there's lots of like just hanging around campus footage too. That's pretty cool. And then, just of course they're going to get the top NBA footage for stuff, but lots of Steph driving. I was like, do we have to have another Steph in the car shot to tell this thing? Like we understand the transition of he's going to do something. Like, let's do like a walking one instead. But yeah, I was entertained. I think it's more for I would say the casual fan who doesn't know a ton about Steph. If you know a lot about him and you know his career, you're going to enjoy it just because it's Steph and you just remember a lot of those moments. But you're also going to be like, I want more. Like, where's this and this and this? But otherwise, all right. The last thing we'll talk about is this Mike Dunleavy situation. Because so you didn't listen to the podcast with
I know
Kawakami.
I freaking messed up. I should.
But I'll kind of use you a little bit as somebody who you don't really have a feeling about him any way, and I do. And I was listening to Ethan with Sam and Andy, and this was a few weeks ago, and I'm just kind of behind in my Ethan feed, and they feel some kind of way about Dunleavy. Like they're like the idea that he was a disappointing player for a disappointing franchise, and that somehow affects how he's going to be a GM. Now, they did say that, Bob Myers, there's no way Bob Myers, in their opinion, there's no way Bob Myers makes the trade for CP. Like they in their opinion, now this is Sam and Andy. Obviously, if you've listened to Sam and Andy, if you listen to Light Years, the takes are sharp.
I think they're right.
And it doesn't even matter if they're right or wrong. The responsibility for the takes, you don't have to follow up on it necessarily when you're doing a podcast, as you would if you were writing pieces in The Athletic. So they can be a little sharper and maybe a little bit more irresponsible with those takes, because it is more in the vein of entertainment, and I think that is acceptable for podcasting. But they were saying that there's no way Bob Myers makes that trade because he would sleep. He was just waiting to get out. He wasn't really doing a lot of work. So I just wonder if the overall thought about Dunleavy is based off of when he came into the league in 2003 as a disappointment. It was 2002, maybe. I think 2002 as a disappointment. And that was the frustration, which was he wasn't the savior. He wasn't Yao. He wasn't Jason Williams or Jay Williams back then. And so does that have anything to do with how he can lead the team as a GM?
I don't think it should. Like a thing I can think of is that when I started my day-to-day job, like looking back at it from where I am now, I'm like, man, I was bad. And if they fired me, like I would see why they did it. But now I feel like way better. And I feel like that kind of applies here, where it's like, this is like a completely different field almost. Like he's not hooping. He's behind the scenes making calls. And, Like I think I'm gonna give him a fair shot, and for me it is a fair shot because I never watched him hoop really. Like even like in his Bulls days, like I wasn't really watching the Chicago Bulls like that. So yeah, he probably is gonna get a fair shot for me. I don't think the two should be related. I think that's my take.
So the other thing that hurts Dunleavy in the eyes of Warriors fans is that he is traded, and the trade is to the Indiana Pacers with Troy Murphy, Ike Diagu, and Keith McLeod for Steven Jackson, Al Harrington, and two other guys who they weren't really a big part of it, but they deal him for what becomes the We Believe, two pieces of the We Believe team. So there's also that thing, which is out with the old and then in with the new, and that We Believe team is so well remembered for Warriors fans. So he wasn't even a part of that.
Would the Warriors fan base feel more comfortable if Stack was the GM?
Stack Jack.
Everyone would be off the board. It just
I want to give him an absolute chance, but there's a small piece of me in my brain where I go, he's so disappointing. And I like, it has nothing to do with him being a GM. It has everything to do with him as a player. So I think that's going to be tough. Like what's this CP3 thing is going to be, I think, a moment for fans in that if it doesn't work out, CP and Dunleavy are going to be connected in this way. So it's almost like CP is an extension of Dunleavy. If he plays well, if CP plays well, I think fans will go, oh, okay, that was actually pretty smart, and maybe you give Dunleavy a chance. But if he doesn't, they're gonna relate that to Dunleavy and his ability to do the job. So that's kind of a risky trade when you think about it, because you're banking on a 38 or 39?
Yeah, he's pretty old.
Old guy with injury history who always breaks down when you need him. And that is the first thing that you tie your legacy as a GM to is this trade with for CP. So that I'm going to be, I think that's going to be a story. That'll be a story for the entire year for the Warriors. And I hope I can shake this frustration with him, because he was
it's
fair
savior. You watched it. It's probably fair criticism. But
if Jay Rich was the GM, I think Warriors fans would embrace it more, even if he wasn't even qualified to be the GM. Like, just because Jay Rich was so beloved, right? Like he was kind of the Monte before Monte, where how come Jay Rich doesn't get respect with the national media? What's going on here? And then he goes out and wins a slam dunk contest 2 times. And it's like, how come he's not making the all-star team? Like, look at his numbers compared to everybody else's numbers. And so that was our guy before that. And so it's kind of the same thing, same with Monte. But I think Dunleavy has his work cut out for him. But I do think that was a pretty brave trade when you think about it.
That's why I'm kind of bullish on his tenure so far. We don't know how long he's been the GM while Bob was out in Hawaii or wherever he was.
Bob was chilling.
Like, who made the Wiseman trade? Like, I wondered, did Dunleavy do that? Because I feel like Dunleavy thus far has shown, like, yeah, I don't really like this sunk cost thing, like, doesn't affect me. Like, I'm willing to, get rid of it. Like Bill was talking about, Bill Simmons and Russillo on their pod were like doing the the expansion team draft, and they had to protect players, and they were going to the Timberwolves. Are like, yeah, we got to protect Rudy, because they would not protecting Rudy would admit, if you're the front office, you'd be admitting that this was the worst trade of all time. I feel like Dunleavy has shown, like, we all knew that this was not a run it back Warriors team.
Mm-hmm. And
if Bob was still there, would he have ran it back? I don't think so. I think Bob's smarter than that, but this was a sunk cost. Like, I love Jordan Poole. It wasn't going to work out. He was not going to be on the roster. I think I said that multiple times on this podcast. So Dunleavy already made a trade, got him out of there after saying he was going to be a Warrior for life. And he might have been the one to get rid of Wiseman too. And I was probably saying you need to keep Wise and invest resources into him. I've changed my tune a little bit on that. And I would like to believe that it maybe was Dunleavy maybe pulling the strings behind there to get GP2 back to make that call. And I don't know that for certain, but we know for certain that the CP thing was him.
Okay, you want to know another thing that's going to tie him? And this is just kind of an unfair thing, which is
Podziemski.
Yes, Dunleavy said Podziemski was in their top 10, right? Is that what he said? They're on the top of their top 10 of their draft board or whatever.
Yeah.
So when whatchamacall kept falling, and we're like, let's get him. He's like, no, well, that's how he justified taking Podziemski.
It wouldn't have worked. Cam Whitmore it wouldn't have worked. It's another Kuminga pick who's not even as polished as Kuminga was. Maybe a little.
So yeah, I mean, but you have to look at it from a possibility of trade bait too. But so Podziemski, talented, multifaceted player, can do multiple things with the ball, but just not the greatest athlete. Dunleavy, coming out of college, very tall. That's the difference with Dunleavy's. He was very tall, could handle the basketball, was supposed to be able to shoot, just not the most athletic guy on the court. And so he's going to tie his entire, his first draft to Pods, who is sort of similar to him on the basketball court, sort of like a guard version, whereas Dunleavy was more of a small forward, and you could play, he could play stretch four. Though they didn't really play him that way that much, but he was tall. Dunleavy was like 6'9" or something like that, from what I remember. So that's the other thing. So that was also very brave of him to tie his first draft class to the guard version of himself, Pods.
Yeah, I'm definitely, learning as I go with how I did those Warriors comps. And I don't think I didn't do any research on Jaime Jaquez. I didn't do any research on Pods other than watching him live. Man, the Warriors lost that coin flip to the Miami Heat, and we could have been picking in their spot. Like Jaime Jaquez on this team, like I think he would be so great on the Warriors. And that one's.
But then Dunleavy would have said Jaime Jaquez wasn't on the top 10 of his board.
Yeah, I don't know what his board was. I think that's a lie because Cam Whitmore had to be higher. He had to be. I would not believe that Cam Whitmore is not higher on your board.
Unless they looked at it the way that you did, which is we already have two guys, who would be in front of him. And it could be another frustrating experience.
Yeah. The thing is that for me, like I'm looking at this Pods pick, like I think I was saying, like I think how I'm looking at it is like, look, here's what we've done in the past. We've drafted the teenagers and we've tried to do the win now, develop now plan. And this Pods pick was more like, okay, he was going into his third year or he just finished his third year. Hypothetically, he should be able to play his first year. That's how I'm looking at the pick. And I don't know if I should be looking at it this way because I'm shooing him into the rotation and it's not guaranteed. And if he does not play this year and does not crack the rotation, to me, I think I've already said it on this podcast. That's a failed pick. I think you needed to draft someone that can contribute minutes. And if that was the case, if Podziemski, if they look at him as like, okay, he's another like developed guy, he's not going to be ready this season. Like you should have just taken Whitmore then, because you're right. It is the trade thing too. He has the trade value. Like after what Whitmore did at the summer league, even though summer league doesn't matter, but it looked right. Like what he did, like it looked like a top pick performing as a top pick. Like I'm sure he upped his trade value off of that. So I think that alone, yeah, Podziemski doesn't play. It's such a failed pick. But then when we picked him, I was like, all right, there's the guy who's going to replace DiVincenzo. Now, obviously, a couple of months later, nothing's really changed, but I'm going to retract that statement. Like, no, he's not going to fill in the 23 minutes or whatever DiVincenzo was playing per night. When everyone went out, DiVincenzo was playing like 26 or 27 minutes.
Yeah.
No, Podziemski's not going to do that, but I do hope he could be, I don't know, I don't know what the rotation is going to look like right now, but maybe Klay turns from he's a starting 2 guard, but then in the backup minutes he's playing the 3, and then maybe Podziemski can play the 2 there, or there's a few combinations, and people are going to be hurt. He's going to have his opportunity, and if he's not able to stick in the rotation as in his rookie season, oh man, yeah, that's what I thought they were doing. I thought they were picking the guy that wasn't that still had room to grow. It wasn't the Jaime Jaquez pick, whereas I think we think Jaime is good, but like how much better can he get? Kind of like where I'm at with Jaquez, but like with Pajemski, I feel like there is still like a ceiling there. Where
Maybe
he
the
could get a lot
idea
better.
is Chris Paul is the DiVincenzo.
Yeah, but CP's yeah.
And
CP's the Jordan Poole, no? He's got to be.
yeah, and then Moody and Kuminga are so.
I think Moody might. I'm kind of bullish on Moody of what he showed us in the playoffs, like which is why we were
showed
so
us in the
confused
playoffs the year before too.
Like, I think he should technically be replacing DiVincenzo.
Yeah, no, there's some, that's why this stuff is fun. There was a question in the comments. Will Klay have a decent playoffs? Why did he lose his legs at the end of the season? And that is a great question. And I think the way that I would, without knowing Klay, the way that these injuries and how these injuries work is the Warriors brought him back the championship season more than halfway through the season. So he didn't even have to play a full season in his injury return. And last year he had to play a full season and he was not in the best shape. So that would be my answer.
Yeah.
They'll have to ask Klay, but my hope for the legs part of it is that, usually when it comes to that, and look, he had 2 injuries. So ACL and the Achilles, they always say it's like that first full year back could be rough, but then it's like that second year when you kind of get it. So that's my hope for Klay, is that with the confidence in the idea that, okay, you're now, going to be 2 years removed from your comeback come January. So by then, maybe is when his legs bounce back. So that is my hope.
Yeah.
All right.
And if it doesn't, then what is he getting paid this year? Like $37 million. And is he on a contract? Is he expiring this season?
I think Klay's expiring.
I mean,
and I think the contract is actually more.
41.
Let me look it up. I'm going to look up Spot Track, my favorite website.
Look, I have no interest in Klay being bad this season, but his contract is for sure not going to be a
43.
43.
43 million.
Regardless of what he does this season, he will not be getting paid that amount again. I don't maybe, I guess if he has this crazy all-star season, maybe, and because contracts are going up, but yeah.
He will be 34 in 2024. So there's got to be a transition of his game. And we'll end on this. The thing you were saying, what is he working on? This isn't a big part of the NBA anymore, especially with guards posting up. But sometimes they cannot get a bucket. I would love to see him work on a post game and fade away, because he does a lot of that. Well, he does a lot of that moving, and he's like moving in the air while the shot. I want to see him do more of the Kobe style of post game, where you just kind of get 10 feet in and you jab step and either get to the hole or they play you that way, and then you turn around and shoot a fadeaway. I would like to see a little bit more, but that's not necessarily how the Warriors play. It could be a little bit more of like, remember when Sean Livingston would come in the game and that they would just go old school ball and he would just hit 15-footers, just shoot 15-footers the whole time. Him and Iguodala and David West, they're just popping, they're popping mid-range. I would like to see some of that from him, because they do need, for that second team, they need a bucket getter. And it's not always going to be, if that 3-point shot isn't there, let's see what he's like, getting in the post a little bit. His handle isn't fantastic, but he doesn't have to necessarily dribble. He could get it on that corner, and he can get that shot up. So I would like to see a little bit more of that, because I do think they're going to need, whenever Steph gets cold, man, that offense can shut down. So that's my hope.
Hopefully with Wiggins full year back, hopefully he plays 80% of the season. He's kind of supposed to be like the second unit creator. So we'll see what he could do.
All right, we're going to end this little shorter than usual, but there is not a whole lot to talk about. So hopefully we'll get some news soon. I think, in another month? Is that when they start the training camp?
I don't know the dates like that for their training camp. Season starts at the end of October?
Yeah, maybe it is a few more weeks after that. I think it's in September when they start getting back together, though.
Huh.
Sunday, Rod and I will be back with our first post recap of the first preseason game between 49ers and Raiders. I wonder if Jimmy G playing in that game? That's gonna be crazy. See. I wonder if they're going to go after Jimmy G if he plays. It doesn't sound like Brock Purdy's going to play, though. At least Kyle was being a little coy about. So make it a lot of good opportunity to see some Trey Lance. So
I like
I'm excited
that.
about that. All right. So we'll be back. We'll figure out our off-season schedule. I feel like last year we had way more to talk about every week than this year. The news just all of a sudden became silent. So we'll figure out when we get back. But for Bri, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.